Hey everyone, you're watching We Had That, and today I'm going to talk about the 1985 Wave 2 Kenner Superpowers figure Steppenwolf. The first wave of Superpowers figures was released by Kenner in 1984, and from what I could tell, the line was heavily promoted. It seems like they advertised on the back of pretty much every DC comic that I read that year. There were also television commercials that seemed to play at every commercial break in my cartoons. And if you somehow missed those, there were wonderful color photos of Superpowers figures and vehicles in the Sears Christmas catalog as well. Right from the start, Wave 1 included the biggest characters in the DC universe. Everyone already knew Superman, but just in case you didn't, there had been a huge Superman movie every couple of years since 1978. Reruns of the 1966 Batman and Robin show and the Wonder Woman show from the late 70s were still on TV, plus Batman and Robin, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and Superman were on the Super Friends cartoon what seemed like every Saturday morning going back to 1973. Even the last three superheroes in the line, Hawkman, The Flash, and Green Lantern, would sometimes show up on Super Friends. I was familiar with all of those characters when Wave 1 came out. Even the villains Brainiac, Lex Luthor, the Joker, and the Penguin were characters that I knew well. Although I would have preferred the version of Lex Luthor from the Legion of Doom, and I would have preferred Captain Cold, Cheetah, or the Riddler to either the Penguin or Brainiac. But man, that Joker figure is awesome. On the package for each figure, Kenner had a variety of different mail-away promotions over the years, from a Superman cape to a fan club package, but the coolest offer, in my opinion, was a mail-away exclusive figure. The first figure offered through the mail-away promotions was Steppenwolf. At the time, I had no idea who he was, but I thought he looked pretty cool. When the second wave of figures was released, Kenner had already released most of their well-known heroes, so the Wave 2 heroes weren't quite as well-known as the Wave 1 heroes had been. In Wave 2, we got Firestorm, Martian Manhunter, Green Arrow, Dr. Fate, and Red Tornado. I was already a fan of Green Arrow, who had appeared on the Super Friends, and may have been relatively well known due to his regular appearances in several popular comic books at the time, such as Green Lantern Green Arrow, Justice League, Brave and the Bold, and World's Finest. But outside of the comic books and a few random appearances here and there, Green Arrow wasn't really as much of an A-list character as the first wave, though possibly the most famous of the new heroes. I remember being at least somewhat familiar with Firestorm, but this may have been my introduction to Martian Manhunter, Red Tornado, and Dr. Fate. As for the bad guys, I had heard of the New Gods comic, but I'd never read a single issue, and apparently I wasn't alone. So I had no idea who the Wave 2 villains were. As it turns out, they were the villains from the planet Apokolips: Darkseid, Kalibak, Desaad, Mantis, the Parademons, and of course Steppenwolf. Steppenwolf first appeared in the New Gods comic number 7 back in 1972. At that time, he looked completely different from the action figure. Very green. Oh, and as a side note, he died in that same issue. Wait, what? Oh, and his story was just a flashback. I feel like this is getting a little confusing. Famous comic book artist Jack Kirby, yes, the Marvel comic book guy, jumped over to DC for a while because he felt like Stan Lee was getting all of the attention. While he was at DC, he came up with this whole New Gods thing. It was huge, it was cerebral, it was complicated, and it really didn't fly off the shelves. But for some reason, he was asked to do some redesigns of his New Gods characters for the Superpowers line, which, as a side note, he actually received royalties for, unlike the many characters he co-created over at Marvel. Those redesigns led to the Wave 2 villains. The first of these villains that kids ever saw was the new version of Steppenwolf, available as the first Superpowers mail-away figure. Although Kirby did a redesign of Steppenwolf that looked nothing like the original green dude from the comics, it also really didn't look all that much like the final figure. However, by the time we saw Steppenwolf, In Who's Who and DC, he's drawn to look like the figure rather than the other versions that Kirby had originally created, which is just as well. I'm pretty sure most kids liked this version better than the old green version anyway. I know I did. The leader of the bad guys from Wave 2 was Darkseid. Steppenwolf was Darkseid's uncle. Steppenwolf was an immortal with superhuman strength whose weapon was an electro axe. Because his electro axe was attached to his backpack with a black string, most of the Steppenwolf figures that you'll find available for sale still have the accessory, unlike the vast majority of Aquaman figures who do not have their trident. I could also attach the axe to Steppenwolf's backpack, which I always thought was really cool. Steppenwolf served as a general to Darkseid and commanded an army of parademons. Each Superpowers figure featured a power action gimmick. For example, if you squeeze Aquaman's arms together, his legs kick. This feature was called his power action deep sea kick. When you squeeze Superman's legs together, his arms move like he's running or punching. This feature was called his power action punch. Steppenwolf's power action gimmick was his power action electro axe chop, which basically meant that when you squeezed his legs together, his right arm, which was the arm that held the electro axe, would come down. It was the same thing as Joker and his mallet from the first wave. Each figure in Waves 1 and 2 came with a mini-comic, and Steppenwolf was no exception. His comic was number 13. I knew every single character from Wave 1, but I still liked the idea of having a mini-comic come with each figure. It wasn't a new idea. Masters of the Universe had been doing it already for several years, but it was still a great way to introduce the characters, especially characters that were originally created for comic books. And especially for those random dudes in Wave 2 who many kids didn't know. Each mini-comic also included other characters that had action figures available, so it was also a promotion for buying more figures. Steppenwolf's comic also included Wonder Woman from Wave 1 and Dr. Fate and Red Tornado from Wave 2. The basic story is Steppenwolf attacks the Pentagon and the heroes stop him. There were also a bunch of full-size comics on the newsstands for Superpowers, and they were, interestingly enough, drawn by Jack Kirby. It's really weird seeing these top-tier characters like Superman and Wonder Woman drawn by Kirby. He's so famous for his Marvel characters. On the back of each figure's package, Kenner presented clip and save bio cards for each character. Again, the comic book and the bio card gave kids an idea of who these superheroes were, and again, especially when they were unfamiliar with the characters. So Wave 2 certainly benefited more from the mini-comics and the clip and save bio cards than the already familiar characters from Wave 1. There were a few minor variations of packaging for the Steppenwolf figure, pretty much just different special offers available on very similar cards. One was for the fan club, another was for a Clark Kent figure. There was also a Steppenwolf card featuring the Wave 3 figures on the back that didn't include an offer at all. The Wave 3 figures did not come with a mini comic book. Even though some of the second wave figures weren't as famous as the characters in the first wave, I think it's great that they were released by Kenner at the time. Sure, there are numerous figures that I would have preferred, but the ones that were released were still pretty cool. Did you have any Superpowers figures as a kid? Do you collect them now? Do you think Superpowers did a good job with the characters in Wave 2? What do you think of Kenner's inclusion of Steppenwolf as part of the line? Let me know in the comments below. Also, please give this video a thumbs up. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe to my channel and hit that notifications bell so that you'll be notified when I post new videos. As always, thanks for watching.